back and thank you for staying with us. Now, organised crime poses an existential threat to South Africa's democratic institution, economy and people. That's according to a report by the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organised Crime. Murder, extortion and kidnapping are among the crimes that feature heavily. Let's discuss this further. We're joined by Professor Narnia Bohler-Muller from the Human Sciences Research Council. She's with us now virtually. Thank you, Prof, for your time here on All Angles and on eNCA. Now, of course, this, partly or hugely, we can blame on the state, which is struggling to contain these type of crimes. We all saw what happened during the July unrest, where the report on state security or intelligence, it was never discussed, and actually we found out this year that it was only sent to the Minister of Police this year.
Yes, I think there's a lot of blame that one can place on the state, and we can see this in the Zondo Commission outcomes, because if you have collusion in the state, if you have an overlap between politics and organized crime, there's obviously going to be more of an opportunity to undertake these illicit activities and into these illicit markets. And as you can see now, we are suffering the harms because of the infrastructure issues at Eskom. I mean, that's an obvious example. And so we need to take into consideration that yes, there is a lot of blame to be placed on the states, but it's also a transnational issue. So the international community needs to sit up and pay attention as well.
And I mean, looking at, for instance, kidnappings, I'm going to come back to the transnational organized crime part of it, because I think that's an even bigger problem. We see it with the Zama-Zamas, etc. But in terms of kidnappings, this was something that, for instance, was never featured in the release of the crime statistics in South Africa until very recently. So the fact that this has become a new category in the minister as he releases the report, then it should show South Africans that this particular crime is now a very serious matter.
It is a very serious matter, and it is actually also transnational, because there are other countries who are actually involved in what's happening in South Africa. Pakistan, Bangladesh and Mozambique in particular have been implicated. And there was a slight increase in reports of kidnapping for ransom from about 2011, which seems to have been the tipping point for this country. But I think in the last 3 years, it's just skyrocketed because kidnapping is basically, it's easy work for a high reward. In other words, the reward is that money is used to feed into other organized crime networks.
And I mean, when we go back to the transnational organized crime, for instance, I mean, just to make mention, I know that there's still some investigations around it, but, a big one that you think of in South Africa as well is also the Phala farm gate, with the president and Namibia also being mentioned there, and how people are able to get in and out of our country so easily, etc. How will this affect us, Prof? I mean, this already is during a time when government is expected to follow through with some recommendations to avoid the country going into a grey list that will affect the economy. Yes. And now we have all of this that shows that we are a country that is susceptible to terrorism, indeed.
Well, it is very disturbing. I mean, in terms of the international statistics, we are rated 19 out of 193 countries in the world. And so we're in the top 20, and it's not a very good top 20 to be in. So we're alongside Venezuela and Libya.
And
in Africa, we are, yes, and Sudan. In Africa, we are number 5. And in Southern Africa, we are number 1 in terms of transnational organized crime. So you can see there that the country really is in trouble. And two of the most critical issues at the moment, and have been for quite a while, is drug trade and firearms, because we find that organized crime in South Africa has one very disturbing feature, and that is there's a lot of violence attached to it. And I think that's why investment is going to become a problem. I mean, international companies are not going to want to invest in a country where there is actually even violence involved in bribery, extortion, corruption, etc.
And Prof, looking at the fact that we have all of these issues, what would be the solution? For instance, the Global Initiative is saying that it partly also blames the apartheid government for what the government of today then inherited. But surely we cannot accept that excuse forever. We know we cannot talk about freedom of this country without making reference to apartheid. That's all good and well. But for how much longer are we expected to accept this as an excuse?
I don't think for much longer. I mean, there are more recent things that have happened that have exacerbated this. I mean, if we think about the fact that in 2011, there started being an increase in organized crime. At the same time, we had a decrease in trust in government and a decrease in trust in democracy. It seems as if the rule of law has been broken down to some extent because of the disrespect shown to the rule of law, disrespect shown to the courts, increase in corruption in SAPS, and also the fact that crime intelligence and state security collapsed because of state capture. So you can see there are trends there. And so we need to look at what happened there, what happened around that time, and how we can strengthen crime intelligence, we can strengthen state security, and we can get rid of corruption within the police, and also get away from this relationship between politics and organized crime.
Yeah, Prof, thank you very much for your time. Professor Narnia Bohler-Muller from the Human Sciences Research Council. She says, eradicate corruption in the police. If anything about yesterday's court case has to go by with the leadership of the police being accused of corruption, I don't know what we're going to do.